I don't really want our private jokes to become a reality, whether it's the sitcom-style saxophone, the monocle breaking and a bourgeois outrage, the sad sandwich, or the single tear of loneliness. These signifiers need to stay only within our friend group. Only then can they make light of already dire situations. To do otherwise furthers the theory that the system can absorb anything thrown at it, absorb it, and then try to sell it back to you. And lately, in this town where I've chosen to live, wherever I go, it's a saxophone. Have you seen the banners that the city hung up and down on Main Street? The shadowed outline of a saxophone player, his frame tilted back, maximum intensity, the slogan below, "Get downtown." Get it? Like getting down, a phrase I'm pretty sure only white people and parents use. Saxophone icon plays pretty prominently in another of Gainesville's remodeling. Those New Orleans condos behind the Krispy Kreme, to the side of the dumpster where people used to get the, quote, vegan fruit pies. The condos are called Jackson Square. That's the name. Maybe it's a very oblique homage to Andrew Jackson's Native American genocide campaign here in Florida. Whatever the case, Jackson Square uses a saxophone as a logo. The instrument floating, no longer bound to the image of a jazzman, the way that the saxophone itself has been historically decontextualized, simply to signify easy good times. The way that we can say, in this new century, New Orleans-style condos without even thinking about Hurricane Katrina, the abandoned city, the unresolved economic questions. I think John or Hope or Shelley, who live there, would probably laugh at this. What kind of laughter? That's a good question. Again, to the victor go the solos. The city itself has been getting down quite a bit lately, and I'm not just talking about the fest, spring break, or the Later Gator free bus service. Later Gator service is part of the public transportation, but instead of concentrating mostly on the east side where people work, it safely shuttles drunk students from their dorms to downtown and back, which, as someone who bikes, I suppose I'm glad there's less drunk drivers on the road. These other condos along this same route, which are in various states of building and financial speculation, don't need a brass instrument for a logo. They just show smiling, safely diverse, and frolicking college students. The saxophone, as you probably know, it's already shorthand amongst my friends for the honking horror of American culture. Remember the sax soundtrack to the film Lethal Weapon? Every time Mel Gibson, the wild card cop, does something crazy, which is pretty often, saxophone comes in like a radioactive cloud, furthering this theory, the appropriation theory. Danny Glover's daughter is in love with wild, white Mel Gibson. Or that beach scene in Lost Boys, where the brothers, new to California, are checking out the ocean boardwalk. The band playing, Timmy Capella, has a shirtless barbarian-looking dude, the heavy chain for a belt, an actual belt the way you see New York City messengers use on their bikes. When this sweaty lion-maned fellow raises the saxophone, he proclaims, "I still believe." And then the brothers look at each other in disbelief and wonder. They realize, as we must, that the siren cult of the saxophone will not be an enemy easily vanquished. But while they later engage with the locals, dispatch the vampires, and the seduced parents tidily within the 2 hours, ours, I fear, will be a messier affair. That last Ass Factor 4 LP had a song called The White House Is All Right, if you like saxophones, which asks the relevant question, where's our Hinckley? 3 songs earlier, they advise, enjoy it while you can. Real life will beat your ass. I find myself listening to this album a lot with its recurrent, cleaving tensions to both somehow never give up the band and then, quote, good luck not getting stuck. It's a posthumous record, still awash in the rumors, and there's maybe 10 of us who theorize about these such things. But as easily as it is to just bury and reference 80s movies, obscure hardcore records, I think looking at the saxophone in a larger context, American jazz culture, will be more relevant, especially because I bought Sonny Rollins' Now's the Time album at a record convention about 13 years ago at the Holiday Inn where Fest registration was taking place this year. You don't have to believe in coincidence or fate/faith, whether this is a fiction story or just another of my long, boring stories that I tell. But I do believe in signposts, and here we are. Again, this goes back to the reading, but here we were at Wayward Council, amidst the fest, amidst the wealth of food, amidst the robbery a few days ago in a college town that still cares about sports victories more than the ongoing wars. So Sonny Rollins, now's the time. I maybe had a Charlie Parker anthology at the time I saw this record at the record convention. My eye fixated on his mohawk, on the record's typography, the whole design. Todd Campese was there as well. He's here this weekend also. Todd kept debating stealing a rare big black record from an adjacent table. Quote, "By rights, that record's ours. That guy is wearing a gator hat." I'll admit, his logic made perfect sense to me, and it still does. I was at the time, and this will be proof of how long ago it was. I was planning on stealing books from the university library upon graduation with the same sort of selfish bravado. Even now, our sense of entitlement is acute and persistent, even if my criteria has hopefully sharpened a bit. The sports dude, gator hat dude, must have gleaned all of this and moved the big black record behind his chair soon after. The hunger in your eyes often gives away the game. Quote, "Do they owe us a living? Of course they fucking do." Crass doesn't get any less relevant. And is it wrong to further then link those lines with the Smiths a decade later saying, "England is mine, and it owes me a living"? But here's the rub. The next two parts. "But ask me why, and I'll what?" He says, both "spit in your eye," and "I'll die." Again, it's a familiar passive-aggressive, a way of winning, or a Pyrrhic victory, or is it arrogance or shyness? There are saxophone success stories. After a few albums worth of success, Sonny Rollins takes a self-imposed sabbatical to instead hone his craft. Rather than disturb his neighbors in his apartment complex, Rollins takes to practicing daily on the Brooklyn Bridge. That sounds like hyperbole, but let us instead take these tales of courage and responsibility to heart for the long battles instead. I went to pay homage to my friend Jessica Mills, who's one of the first people I met in Gainesville. She worked at both Burrito Brothers and the university screen printing shop, so I saw her pretty often. She was always very friendly and told me about the best skate shops in town. Not skate shops, but skate spots, meaning you wouldn't go there to buy something, you could just go and skate at the ditch, obviously. However, with Jessica, she later started playing saxophone in Less Than Jake. Her presence was a saving grace amidst the dudes and their sort of snowboarding attitudes. Later, she left the band for obvious reasons, and now does things like play with Citizen Fish and the Subhumans and raise two pretty awesome daughters. Less Than Jake, however, in my eyes, showed their true colors. They erased her tracks in the early recordings and redid them with a new saxophone player, hoping to cut her out of future royalties. I can't make this stuff up. As with the fest, bars have a tendrilled and codependent relationship with the saxophone. Have you heard the phrase walking the bar? It's every bit as humiliating as it sounds. Saxophones in early jazz groups were expected to hop up on the bar and shuffle across, honking notes, maybe knocking over glasses to the delighted/entertained bar patrons. I should mention Ornette Coleman here as well, since I don't want to, in the words of Ryan Greensboro, be a total hater. Ornette Coleman, he switched to a plastic toy saxophone after an especially angry listener threw his metal sax into the river. Again, there's no real need for further metaphor. History gives us enough cautionary tales, and a few heroic ones as well. Coleman's mother used to mail him loaves of bread so he wouldn't starve as he got his band together. Think about that. Bread making its way across America via the tortoise-like postal service. However warm and fresh the loaf was when it was mailed, it had to be rock hard by the time it arrived. Still, he survived. Even after his hotly contested success, Coleman refused to rest on any sort of these codified laurels. And I quote, "People always talk about how much I've done, but I always hope I can do so much more." And with Fela, again, I realize we're moving out of the punk scene and into an entirely different time period, culture, and genre. but I believe in taking inspiration where we can, because Fela brandished the saxophone like a scepter, like a death ray. He went to London for college and instead became enamored of American soul music. He moved back to Lagos and built a compound and seriously intended to wreck the government. And quote the documentary, "Music is the weapon of the future." There's a wrenching scene, a scene I haven't been able to watch again, where he proclaims himself unafraid of death, unafraid of the military, unafraid of whatever may come. "I have death right here in my pouch," he says, motioning to a tiny sack attached to his loincloth. And he's done enough stupendous things up to this point that I don't want to believe. I want to believe that he won't succumb to AIDS. Around this time, I also learned that my uncle played saxophone in high school. I doubt that my uncle's taste in music is any more enlightened than his philosophy on race relations, but I still had to ask. I knew I had to ask if he was into jazz. Oh hell no, Trav. That wild jigaboo music, I prefer Boots, Randolph, yakety sax. Case closed. Cue the yakety saxes. Let us briefly, in conclusion, also refer, bringing us back to the contemporary, to the film The Royal Tenenbaums, where our hero from Lethal Weapon, the real hero, Danny Glover, is still trapped by the saxophone paradigm. In a key macho kitchen set scene in this film, he gets called Coltrane by a jealous, impotent Gene Hackman. It was the defining scene for me of the film, and the reason why I tend to prefer it over the other works. I do want Gainesville to get down, get entertained, and get connected, but can we do it in a way that creates an actual alternative to these empty condos, to Cisco as vegetarian food, and PBR sponsorship? Is there an alternative to sanitized appropriation? Can we learn a liberation theory the way that Charlie Hayden did after his first practice with Ornette Coleman? Ornette Coleman and Charlie Hayden finally found each other. They practiced in the garage, eventually coming out with Shape of Jazz to Come. I quote Charlie Hayden here. "Each note was a universe. Each note was your life." Thanks.